What is up, my BosBabes fanatics? And I want to give a shout out to the Highpoint Rockers fans because I know you guys will be listening into this fantastic brand new episode. I'm your host, Brittany Baldi of the Lifestyle Sports Podcast, the BosBabes, of course. And joining me today very shortly is Bryce Hensley. He is a North Carolina area native, country singer, and professional baseball player, multi-talented. I am so thrilled to have him join us today. First off, I hope you guys enjoyed my Highpoint Rockers baseball episode that I dropped last week. It was just me chatting about the full 2022 season and how I got to be part of some of their top memories. You guys also heard from Alexis Oxendine and Ainsley Cromer, two young women that I worked beside all season long as part of the Finn experience with the team. If you guys haven't checked out that episode already, please feel free to go ahead and do so. You guys can check out that episode. It's on iTunes and Spotify. You guys already know my podcast is free to listen to and free to subscribe. Thank you guys for tuning in each and every month. You guys know that I drop about 4 brand new episodes per month. And speaking of the Highpoint Rockers, joining me today is a very special guest. Not only is he an up-and-coming country singer, he is one of the Highpoint Rockers baseball pitchers. I just want to welcome in Bryce Hensley. Bryce, how are you?
Doing well. How are you today, Brittany?
Doing well, and I know you are kind of pressed for time. You guys have a baseball game tonight. You have to pack for a road trip, so we're going to try to keep this at around an hour if we can, but I just wanted to break the ice. I love to break the ice with my special guests, and I thought this was like the perfect break the ice question for you. If you could only listen to one song for the rest of your life, what would it be and why?
I'm going to have to go with Springsteen by Eric Church. Being a North Carolina guy, you basically worship Eric Church. You know, he grew up an hour down the road from me, and I think he's a phenomenal songwriter. And Springsteen's one of those songs that he wrote about a feeling that you get when you hear a song. And when I hear that song to this day, it doesn't matter how many times I listen to it, it still gives me goosebumps.
And I kind of assumed that it would be something country related. And that's awesome that you mentioned somebody that grew up sort of within your area. First off, before we even get into baseball, before we start talking about country music, let's discuss your younger years. I wanted to shout out your website first and foremost, brycehensley.com. Guys, if you want to check out his website, it's simply BryceHensley.com. There you will find so much about Bryce, his career, music, I think a little bit about baseball potentially, and of course you can shop some of his merchandise. Again, BryceHensley.com. Early years. You were born and raised in Asheville, North Carolina. Can you please describe that town for my BosBabes fanatics and the Rockers fans that are currently listening?
So I'm technically from a town called Swannanoa, but nobody knows where that is. So you got to say Asheville because everybody knows where the Biltmore House is. But when I was growing up, it was very small and very it's one of those places where we always made the joke, if you didn't know what you were doing, you didn't have to worry because somebody else already knew what you were doing. It's grown up a lot as I've gotten older. You know, it was really cool to grow up in such a small community in the mountains, and I love the mountains. I'll always be a mountains guy, but it's also cool to see it kind of flourish and people start moving in. You know, I grew up in the middle of the backwoods in Swannanoa, North Carolina, and my whole entire family still lives there, aside from me and my brother. But it was a really cool place to grow up and kind of get to see the world from the top of a mountain, basically.
I was just kind of curious about it as well. As you know, my fiance Ryan, who you guys play on the same team together, he went to college up that way, and I've yet to be able to visit that area, but I hear it's beautiful with all the mountains, and I'm sure during the fall it's gorgeous with all the foliage and such. I know you mentioned that you have a brother. Let's discuss that dynamic. Is he older than you, younger than you? Do you have any other siblings?
Yeah, so he's 9 years older than me, so Dad really timed that one well. But I have my brother, and then I have 4 step siblings. So growing up, it was just my brother, and then my parents remarried, and obviously it's always a bonus when you get step siblings. Growing up, it was, you know, with the age difference, it was always really weird. I was kind of a brat as a kid and blamed him for everything. And, you know, being the younger one, they always listen to you, so he hated that. But the older we've gotten, the closer we've gotten. So it's been really cool to see our relationship grow up as we do too.
And when you guys were younger, again, you mentioned growing up in the mountains and kind of being in a woodsy area. What were some of your favorite activities that you guys did? Did you get into hunting? Did you go hiking? What, as a child, kept you guys entertained? Did you play like kickball or did you start t-ball at a young age? Like, what got you guys amped up and your energy out when you were younger?
You know, we were always sports people. My brother played professionally for 10 years. So basically, it was bred into me. But, you know, we grew up hunting a lot up in the mountains. But our favorite thing, and one, you know, people always ask me what was my favorite memory as a kid. On summer nights back home, we had fireflies everywhere. So we'd always go out with like a wiffle ball bat. And honestly, how I learned to hit baseballs was hitting fireflies in the summertime with a wiffle ball bat. So that was one of our favorite things to do.
Oh my gosh, that is actually super interesting. That might be my opening clip, is you talking about hitting the fireflies with the little wiffle ball bat and the baseball bat, learning to hit. I've never heard that before in my life. That's super interesting. I've heard of like people in the Dominican and Puerto Rico, they'll take like a broomstick and they try to hit like bottle caps and stuff like that to work on their hand-eye coordination. But I've kind of cool growing up in a country-like area. How did you guys celebrate the holidays? Were you into celebrating Christmas or Thanksgiving? What did you guys celebrate? And what were some of your top holiday meals that you enjoyed that your family would cook? Or I don't know if you're a cook yourself.
Lately, actually, yes. I've gotten, you know, when you go off to college, Dad wanted to make sure I knew how to cook. So I actually somewhat took cooking lessons before I went to college and kind of learned to love it. You know, I like to eat, so I figured out if I wanted to eat, especially when I ended up on my own, I had to learn how to cook. You know, I've got a pretty big family, so we always all got together on the holidays. Honestly, Thanksgiving's always been my favorite holiday. I like it because it's about, you know, the fellowship that you have with family and friends, and I've been really blessed to have a lot of friends in my lifetime that are a lot more like family than they are just, you know, acquaintances. But every Thanksgiving, we wake up first thing in the morning, we go outside, me and Dad crack a beer and sit in the driveway, and Dad always deep fries turkeys for everybody in the neighborhood. So we'll go out there and start deep frying turkeys and, you know, 10 11 a.m. And that's my favorite part about it is, you know, there's no pressure about gifts. You're not worried about trying to make everything perfect. It's kind of just about being together and having good food and, you know, and just enjoying who you have around you. So that's always been my favorite part about it.
I love asking that question about the holidays to all of my special guests because I feel like it allows the listener to sort of deep dive a little bit into like your personal and intimate lives as far as like who the heck were you before you got into country singing, before you started your own business, before you got into a professional sport. So thank you for sharing all that. Last
Absolutely.
question regarding the early years, then we're going to sort of segue into sports a little bit. What types of traveling, if you guys did any traveling when you were younger, did you ever go to Europe or did you guys hop on an airplane, go to LA? Did you ever go to Nashville? Did you do anything locally, like go to some of the local beaches in North Carolina?
You know, growing up, we always went to Charleston for vacation. Like I said, I had a brother that was 9 years older than me. So we started off travel at an early age, you know, following him playing baseball. And especially when he went to college, every weekend that I had free, my brother went to Elon, which is, you know, right down the road from us right now. Every weekend we'd get in the car and wherever they were, that's where we were. And that continued into, you know, when he started playing professionally. Outside of the country, we took like a trip or two to the Virgin Islands, but that's about it. Then we spent Christmas in Mexico one year. He was playing down there, which was pretty cool. You know, traveling the country playing baseball is what we spent most of our lives doing. So that's kind of what we got accustomed to. And I think Dad enjoyed a nice little break until it was time for me to start doing it again. And then the whole process started all over again.
Well, thank you once again for sharing so much about your early years. BosBabes fanatics, thank you so much for tuning in. And I want to shout out again the Highpoint Rockers baseball fan base because I know you guys are probably listening into this episode as well. Let's segue a little bit into sports. You guys are now listening to Bryce Hensley. He is a professional baseball player, pitcher. We're going to discuss that in a little bit. Also an up-and-coming country singer, so multi-talented. You guys just heard him talk about the fact that he grew up in the North Carolina area, in a small town, grew up in the mountains, and very close to his family and everything else in between. So again, stick with us. Sports. This is a lifestyle sports podcast, so of course we're going to be talking about it. What did you guys watch growing up? Was it baseball all day, every day? Did you guys get into football, soccer? Were there figure skating? I mean, what did you guys watch growing up? And were there any athletes that you looked up to besides your brother, who you've mentioned a few times that is also a former pro athlete that was 9 years older than you were?
You know, it's funny. We actually got into everything. I played soccer for a couple of years and I realized really quickly I didn't like to run that much. So I was a really good goalie because I didn't have to move a whole lot and I was kind of a fat kid. So it worked out well that I took up most of the goal. But we love to watch football. I'm a big college football fan. I've been a Clemson fan. I don't know why, to be honest, but I've been a Clemson fan for as long as I can remember. You know, North Carolina is such a great area. You know, you got the Duke Carolina rivalry. So watching college basketball was always huge. North Carolina doesn't have a major league team yet, so we grew up Atlanta Braves fans, and it worked out really cool. I actually talked to Ryan about this a while back. My high school pitching coach actually worked with him and taught him his slider, which I thought was a cool connection. But he played for the Atlanta Braves for a long time, so we grew up going to Braves games to watch him when I was younger. But, baseball was always on the TV, but we also made sure that we dove into everything else. My dad, my brother, and I are big golfers as well. When you play baseball and especially when you're a pitcher, you only play, a couple times a week. So you got to find something to keep that competitive edge and to keep your mind going. So we played a lot of golf, but honestly, one of our favorite things to do is go to NASCAR races. I don't know what it is. I can't watch it on TV. Dad used to put it on after church on Sundays, and I'd fall asleep watching it every time. But something about going to a NASCAR race, it was always one of my favorite things to do.
Were there any NASCAR racers that you not tried to emulate, because of course you're not a professional racer now, but like when you're a little kid and you're like driving around your fake Jeep, or you're learning how to drive your car, and of course being a racing fan, where you like, oh, I really wish I could drive my car like so-and-so. Were there any racers in particular that you looked up to, or maybe even that you currently do now?
Oh, Dale Earnhardt, absolutely. The mentality that the guy had, you always find elite athletes in every sport. And I think the personality and the mentality that the guy had is something people still look up to today, and I still miss about him today. But, it's wild to think about. Like, my dad can still tell me where he was on the day that Dale Earnhardt died. So that was somebody we always really enjoyed watching, and somebody that I always looked up to, not just in the sports aspect, but in life.
That is an excellent answer. Before we switch on over and I start asking you questions about how you got into the baseball world, how important do you think it is for any type of youth, male, female, to get into sports young, like meeting friends, developing that discipline, working on that hand-eye coordination, having something to do, like a fun recreation in between school and such? Like, how important do you feel it is for the youth to get involved with an activity like a sport as a kid?
I think it's extremely important. I talk about this all the time. You look at the stats, and most people don't end up getting the chance to do, what I do, of playing professional baseball, and God's blessed me a lot to have the chance to do that. But outside of doing it professionally, I can't be thankful enough that I got started at a young age. It teaches you life lessons that I don't really think you can learn from anywhere else. You learn how to work as a team. You learn how to overcome adversity. You learn how to work with people and how to get the best out of yourself. You were talking about the discipline. You learn how to be on time. I'm still working on that part, but you learn a lot about yourself, and you learn a lot about life. And I think that's the biggest part about it. I always told good coaches that I had, and I tried to make a point of it. Like, it wasn't as much how much better they made me at baseball, but it was how much better of a human being that they helped me become, is how I judge coaches. And I think that's a huge part of getting into sports young, is becoming the best version of yourself and learning what that means and what that looks like and how to achieve it. And, in life, when you get a job, when you have a family, you have to learn how to overcome adversity. You have to learn how to work as a team. And I think a lot of that comes from sports. So I think it's a big deal to, make sure your kids have some kind of activity like that to get into.
It gives you something to do aside from homework or video gaming. And then you also develop friendships while playing these sports too. It teaches you how to interact, which is a big reason why I wanted to start this Lifestyle Sports podcast, is to have this platform and allow young listeners to sort of learn from all of you guys and get into sports at a young age. Let's jump right into baseball. So I know you played a multitude of things when you were younger, and obviously it sounds like you were highly active with your brother and your family. At what age did you start playing? Was it t-ball? Did you start Little League? Did you just skip and go right into high school? Like, at what age did you start playing baseball, and at what age did you start to realize, like, hey, this might be sort of like a little calling for me?
As soon as, I'm pretty sure I was born with a baseball in my hand, to be honest with you. My whole entire family had played at some point. So as soon as I could walk and was physically capable to play baseball, they had me on a team. So as long as I can remember, to tell you the truth, I can't remember my life without it, or without sports of some extent. Honestly, it took a while. I was a really late bloomer. It was always really weird, being from a small town and having a brother that had so much success, because I felt like for a lot of my life I was in a shadow and kind of had expectations to live up to. And it was really cool when it got to the point where, he finally realized it too, and was like, hey, just like, be you. You're not Stephen Hensley's little brother. You're Bryce. So I always tried to live up to it for a long time, and then finally realized who I was, on a baseball field and outside of it. And that made life a lot easier. But it was really cool to have a role model and somebody to go to when things went tough in the sports world and in life. that I could call that had been there. But as long as I can remember, honestly, I've been on a baseball field.
I love that you point out the fact that you were basically born with a baseball in your hand. That's a really cute comment. And I'm sure the listeners will think that's awesome as well. I recently, probably a couple months back, interviewed a professional ice hockey player, and he kind of said something similar where he basically he came out the womb with like a hockey stick and skates on his feet. So
Yeah.
it's definitely interesting to hear pro athletes say things like that, which it totally makes sense, right? You're born into a world of sports, and you yourself kind of develop into potentially what could be a pro athlete like yourself. I want to lightly discuss your pro baseball career. Feel free to correct me on any of this if I'm wrong. Again, I pulled this from offline. But Bryce Hensley attended the University of North Carolina in Greensboro, North Carolina. He was drafted in the 2018 MLB June Amateur Draft in the 22nd round by the Kansas City Royals. You bat and throw lefty, which is pretty cool. And obviously, you are a pitcher. Kind of already described a little bit about your career and at what point you kind of knew that this would be a career move. But I guess at what point, like, is there any like dead set moment that you were like, wow, like I'm going to play in college. I might actually be able to get drafted. I'm probably going to go pro. Like, is there like any pivotal moment that you were like, this is it for me?
Honestly, I made this joke the other day. We had an autograph session, and somebody was like, I really like your signature. And I joked around about, I'd been practicing it for a long time, but I think I had this sense of, I didn't know how I was going to do it. I didn't know how it was going to happen, and I wasn't good enough to make it happen, but I was going to find a way. One thing I've always been really good at it is, if somebody tells me I can't do something, proving them wrong. And I think that's how a lot of people found a way to motivate me. But it was my senior year of high school when I finally figured out, like, wow, I might actually be able to do this. In Asheville, we were blessed to have a lot of really good athletes to play against, and guys were committing to go to college as, 14, 15-year-olds, and I was a little bit behind and hadn't really grown into my body yet. And it wasn't until my senior year where it finally came together and my body started to grow and click at the same time. And I finally felt comfortable in my own skin. And all of a sudden, the baseball aspect of it came around, and college came around. And I actually went to Catawba Valley Community College for my first year. I committed there as a junior, and I wasn't very good at the time, but they took a chance on me, and then had an opportunity to go to a couple of schools my senior year, but I've always been very big on honor and commitment that I make. So I still wanted to go and honor my commitment. And when I got there, that's when I kind of figured out, like, wow, this actually, I might have a chance at this. And then going to Greensboro, we had some rough times my first year, but they understood how to motivate me as well, and understood that they had to jump me a little bit. And I came back a completely different person, a completely different baseball player, and was ready to go. And, like I said, I think I always knew. I just didn't know how it was going to happen, when it was going to happen, but I knew I'd find a way to do it.
What were some of your top memories while playing college baseball? And also, what did you study in college? Like, I find myself, I don't ask that question that often. Obviously, when you go to college, you're technically a student athlete. First off, what did you study in college and why? And then what are some of your top memories playing college baseball?
So I studied business administration. I always figured, to tell you the truth, I never saw country music being a career, or honestly being anything that ever left my bedroom. But I've always been really good with people and communicating. So I figured the best thing I could do was find a way to hone those skills. And I figured business was the best way to do it. But honestly, college was some of the best years of my life. I made my best friends in the world in college baseball. So it was honestly an honor and a blessing to get to go out there every single night with those guys and get to compete. But I think my favorite memory, and I'll never forget this, when I was a freshman in high school, my high school baseball coach asked me what I wanted to do. And I said, one of these days I'm going to pitch at Clemson University. And he laughed at me and was like, yeah, that'll be the day. And my junior year, we made a regional and we played at Clemson, and I left him a ticket, and I pitched the opening game at Clemson against Clemson on Friday night. And he showed up to the game, and after the game came up and hugged me with tears in his eyes and told me that was the best crow he ever tasted. So I thought that was one of the coolest moments, to have somebody that, actually believed in me and still ended up showing up for that moment. And it was really cool.
That's a super cool memory and probably something you'll never forget. And if you decide to have kids down the road, I'm sure you'll share that story with them as well. So thank you for sharing that special moment that happened to you while playing college baseball. anything while playing pro ball? Obviously, we're going to get into the Highpoint Rockers, so let's not discuss the Highpoint Rockers just yet. Let's talk a little bit about being involved with the Kansas City Royals organization. What was that whole experience like? And what were some of your top traveling memories that you had while being involved within that organization?
And I've said it already today, but I got really lucky having a brother that had been through this process and kind of seeing how it worked. Because otherwise, I think I would have been lost, to be honest with you. But it was a crazy day, when you're sitting there and basically waiting on your career to come up on a computer screen and figure out what you're going to do for the rest of your life. And in about a 3-hour span, it's kind of a whirlwind. In 2017, I thought I was going to get drafted, and it didn't work out that way. And I sat there and watched every name pop up. And, in 2018, my dad and I just sat by the computer screen. And honestly, I never thought it was going to be Kansas City. I thought I was going to the Phillies, and I sat there and watched, and I looked away for a second, and I looked back up, and I'll never forget sitting there and be like, Ted, that's my name. And it was a really cool moment. It was kind of a really cool, intimate moment for, my dad's put so much into my career and into my life and the person that I am. And to get to see him enjoy that moment with me was really cool. My brother's draft experience and mine were very different. We had planned out this big party that we were going to throw to celebrate. And I got a call, and it was like, hey, you got a flight in the morning. You got to be clean shaven, and we wear collared shirts everywhere we go. So it went from, kind of being relaxed in college to all of a sudden, like, I got to be clean shaven every day. I've got to wear a collared shirt everywhere I go, to being a part of something a lot bigger than myself in a really big industry. And they sent me straight out to Arizona, and I stayed in Arizona for about a year, and then finally got a chance. I went to high A in Wilmington for a week, went back to Arizona, and then went to double A in Arkansas, and then flew out a week later and went to low A in Lexington, Kentucky. And that league has the craziest and worst travel of all time. So we were everywhere from, Maryland, Kentucky to, I think one of the coolest ones was I got to pitch in my hometown. We sold out the crowd, and that was probably one of the cooler moments I've ever had. I don't get to do a whole lot of things back home, but seeing the whole community and my family and friends show up just to get the chance to watch me pitch was a pretty cool and surreal moment.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all that about your draft night and about your brother's draft night. Those are obviously some very special moments that you will obviously never forget. Your family probably won't ever forget. And I'm sure my listeners that are tuning in right now are happy to be learning a lot about you behind the scenes. You guys are now listening to Bryce Hensley, again, professional baseball player, comes from a history of other pro athletes, which is pretty cool, which I didn't even know about till speaking to him today. And on top of that, he grew up in a small town, which I think is awesome. And I want to switch on over and discuss the Highpoint Rockers. We have to talk about the Highpoint Rockers journey. I obviously met Bryce through my fiance, Ryan. They are both pitchers within the Highpoint Rockers baseball team. What do you hope to accomplish with the Highpoint Rockers baseball team? Is it kind of just like, are you doing it for fun right now? Is it more of like a career move? Because again, the reason why I ask is obviously you're really into the country music, and I can't wait to discuss that. How is it juggling, I guess, both parts of your career right now? And what do you plan to do in the Rockers organization?
Honestly, I don't know. To tell you the truth, I kind of fly by the seat of my pants a lot. When I got released by Kansas City, I wasn't sure if I was going to keep playing or if I was going to move on and become a real adult. That's the joke we always make about when baseball ends. I finally got to grow up. But I got lucky enough to get a chance to come here. It's also funny. I meant to say this earlier. Ryan going to school in my hometown. Like, I remember being in high school going to watch him pitch in college. And it was kind of cool. He was kind of a legend back home. So when he came here last year, that was kind of a really cool moment. It's been really cool to get to know him and spend time with him in the bullpen and get to call him a friend. So that's been really cool. But to be honest with you, right now, it's kind of just the love of the game. I always said that I would stop playing baseball when it wasn't fun or when I wasn't good enough to play. And to be honest with you, I'm having more fun than I ever have right now. And it's really fun to go out there with a group of guys like we have in an organization like we have and just get to be yourself. When you get to affiliated baseball, they want you to fit a mold, and understandably so, because you're representing something a lot bigger than yourself. But a lot of times you feel like you're walking on eggshells. The really cool part about this place is they let your personality run, and they don't try to tamper with it. They tell you to be yourself at all times. So honestly, where baseball is going, I don't know. I love High Point, and honestly, I like it here, and I probably won't play anywhere else. This town has taken such good care of me and adopted me like this is my own hometown, and I love this place. And being a part of a community that that really thrives and loves their baseball around here because it's, one of the only things to do in High Point. But it's really cool, when you go out to eat and people come up and shake your hand, or, kids want to come have an autograph or take a picture with you. That's why I love this city so much and the people in it.
And speaking of being able to give back to the community and being a part of the locals with both the adults and also the youth, I know you guys have done a number of baseball camps and such this recent baseball season. How is that being able to give back to the local community through the Rockers?
I think it's phenomenal. Every meet and greet we do, I try to be a part of. You always live your life to be remembered, and you hope it's for more good than it is bad. But, I always want to make sure that the community and the fans and everyone else understands how much they mean to us. Cause we, in 2020, we had to play with no fans in the stands, and it was not a lot of fun. So when we get a chance to pack the house and people come out to watch us play, it's a whole lot of fun, and it's very exciting, and the fans here love it. So it's really cool to be able to give back and, just show up and genuinely show the people of this town that we care about them as much as they care about us.
All right. And this is our last baseball question before we switch on over to country music, because again, I know you need to get going probably within the next 20 minutes to a half hour to get ready for your game later on tonight. But what are you hoping to have happen? Obviously, the last couple of weeks of the 2022 Rockers season. Obviously, we're hoping to go to the playoffs, but is there anything personally that you would like to accomplish aside from the team making playoffs? Is there anything that you would personally like to accomplish within the last couple of weeks, whether that be like perfecting a certain pitch or maybe reaching a certain amount of strikeouts or something? Any like personal goals that you hope to hit?
Ryan and I have actually been competing. When I say Ryan and I, it's usually just me telling him that we're very close, but the amount of appearances we have, I think we're tied right now after last night. And I don't even know if he keeps up with us, but I always make the joke to him every day. The biggest thing is honestly winning a championship here. Like I said, I love this town and I love the people in it. And I think bringing the championship to this town would do a lot for it. And I think it's something that people would never forget. And, if I get a chance to go out there and pitch every day and make that happen and be a part of that, that's all that really matters to me.
Well, that is amazing. I'm glad that you have those goals, and it's cute that you and Ryan and a couple of the other guys have like some healthy competition going on, right? It helps give you guys a little edge and that push to want to do better, not only for yourselves but the team itself. Absolutely. So once again, thank you so much for sharing so much about your early years, baseball, being drafted by the Royals, and now kind of trying to figure out, you're at that point, like you jokingly said, am I ready for real life? Am I ready for the real world? Do I want to play baseball? Do I want to get a real job? Do I want to continue to have the hobby turn country music maybe into something big? You could potentially be like the next Chris Lane or Morgan Wallen, or you never know, like follow your dreams. And that's a big part of this podcast too, is I enjoy having guests like yourself on here, because it might give my young listeners the encouragement to chase after those goals and aspirations, even if they seem unattainable. We like to tell you guys they are fully attainable, but you have to work hard towards those goals and aspirations. So with that being said, country music, and we've been kind of poking the bear a little bit, and I want to spend a decent amount of time on this. Bryce, as we've been talking about, is multi-talented. I remember last season, so when Ryan got released from being involved with the Seattle Mariners organization, he was then picked up by the Highpoint Rockers. I remember last year, Bryce actually did a really cool concert on the field, and that was one of the top memories that I had from the end of the season last year. Bryce, actually, they set up almost like a mini stage, and he did a concert for everybody. I believe it was post-game. It might have been pre-game. I don't remember. But it was around this time last year. That was a lot of fun. So again, it's cool to see you showcase both of your talents on the field. So let's hop right into your music career. On your website, you state, and this was really cute and I wanted to share it out. So on Bryce's website, there's a quote from Bryce, and it said, and I quote, "When I was 5 years old, I got my first guitar. Although I had no clue how to play, that didn't stop me from writing songs and strumming along." So can you kind of like get into your musical journey? It sounds like at a very young age, you kind of just picked up a guitar. You enjoyed writing music and doing all of the musical things. I don't know anything about music writing or how to play guitar. You are going to teach us right now. What sparked your interest in country music?
My grandfather actually, back before I was born, he used to tour the country singing country music. It was around the same time as Elvis. And They always joked around like, if it wouldn't have been for Elvis, probably would have made it really big. My great-grandfather used to play mandolin at the Grand Ole Opry. So I grew up with music in the house all the time, and my grandpa, to this day, and even in his old age, still has an unbelievable voice. So, you always want to emulate the people that you look up to and the people that you're around. After his stint in country music, he became a pastor and he became a gospel singer and used to tour the country singing gospel music. And they went very hellfire and brimstone. And, we didn't listen to a lot of country music growing up. It was a lot of gospel music, but me being the rebel wild child I was, still fell in love with country music. So I remember getting my first guitar at about 5 years old. It was a Christmas present from my grandparents. And they tried to teach me how to play, and I could never figure it out. I went and took lessons at one point, and I took about 3 of them, and I realized that wasn't for me, so I just decided to teach myself how to play. I was always really good with words. For some reason, that's always been, my go-to. So I always wrote the lyrics to it. I just never had a clue how to do the music part. And then once I taught myself how to play guitar, it became a little bit easier.
I like that you brought up you were always really good with your words, and that was actually going to be my next question, because I've never actually spoken to, in all my years of doing tons of interviews with people, I've never actually spoke with anybody that writes their own songs. What's kind of like the thought process of wanting to write a song? Is it kind of like late at night, you'll wake up and you'll be like, oh crap, like let me jot this down? Or is it maybe you're going through a bad breakup or something, or you're in a fight with somebody? Like what sparks your interest, I guess, in writing certain songs? And then also the biggest difference between writing a song now versus being like 5 years old when you're probably writing about like a rubber ducky and playing outside,
Absolutely. Honestly, it's a multitude of things. I've always found when I don't know how to feel about something, or I can't really put my emotions together, that singing it for some reason makes it easier. And that's the easiest way to let my thoughts flow. So every song I write is something real. If I don't believe it, I can't sing it. And you can always tell when somebody sings something that isn't genuine, if they don't actually believe or feel. So whatever's going on in life, you can always tell, how my life's going at the moment by the songs that I write. I think the difference of writing songs now compared to, when I was young, the older you get, the more you see how life works. And, especially I'm at the age right now where I'm really starting to understand, like, Dad was right about a lot of things. Mom was right about a lot of things. And life starts to make a little bit more sense to you. Not a whole lot of it, but a little bit more. So I think being able to put it into words like that kind of makes it easier sometimes. When I struggle with life, you'll really see the guitar come out. And that's, people always ask, oh, how'd you write this song? And that's my favorite thing to do when I get on stage. Up until this point, every time I've gotten on stage, it's just me and a guitar. I haven't had a band yet. And I think it's really cool to be able to sit up there and tell the stories about the songs that I write instead of just singing them and letting you try to figure it out. But that's one of my favorite parts about it is, giving people the thought process and the idea of, when I write a song, this is what I was thinking, this is what I was going through, and this is what came of it. And I think it makes it a little bit more intimate and personal for people to have that connection to it.
Do you think it's almost kind of like a form of self-therapy in a way? And the reason why I ask this is I myself love to journal. So when you're kind of writing a song, right? Again, I'm no songwriter. I can't sing. Like I couldn't sing to save my life, to be honest. Like when Christian is like, Britt, go out there and sing happy birthday at Rocker Stadium. I'm like, why isn't Bryce doing this? Like, what is going on here? So I'm just like kind of poking fun at the fact that once in a while they have me sing happy birthday to the fans at Rockers Stadium at Truist Point. But anyways, I do like to journal, and I like to journal up my thoughts, but there's no way in heck I'd be writing a song. So for you, I guess my question would be, do you kind of see it as like a therapy sometimes when you're sitting there writing about like a breakup or a fight or whatever the case may be?
Oh, absolutely. That's, I'm not really good about writing things down to probably to a fault. Like even the songs I sing, I don't ever write down just because I want to feel it more than I want to write it, I guess, if that makes any sense. But that's the best form of therapy that I have is, baseball and music. And that's, people always ask, where are you most comfortable in the world? And it's, standing on the mound or standing on stage and being able to pour my heart into something. And I think that's what it is being able to take what I feel and put music behind it. And, if I'm sitting here talking about it, sometimes I can't really find the words to put my thoughts together, but as soon as the music starts, for some reason, it becomes a lot easier. So it's my best form of therapy. And that's, when I'm going through a tough time, writing songs or even just sitting here and singing songs, that's something that always really helps me get through it.
So where can people check out some of your music? Throw out some of your top songs that you've enjoyed writing and recording, and name drop some of your albums that you might have out. Where can people listen to your music? Spotify, iTunes, where can they pick up an album? For those of you guys that are listening right now, shout out to the Highpoint Rockers fans that are tuning in and also my BosBabes fanatics. Please go ahead and check out Bryce Hensley's music. We're going to have him shout out some of that content right now for you all.
Anywhere you can listen to music, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, iTunes. I put out a couple singles to start off, and then I put out an EP. And I'm actually in the process of finally finishing up my first full-length record right now. So in the next month or two, hopefully that should be out. So I'm very excited about that one.
So can people just simply go on iTunes or Spotify or iTunes Music and just type in your name and music will pop up?
Yes, ma'am. Just type in Bryce Hensley on anywhere you can listen to music, and everything I got should pop up.
Perfect. And I wanted to point out this particular song because I went ahead and watched the music video. And I know we kind of already spoke about some of these songs come from personal experience. So I went ahead and I watched the music video, Duct Tape Can't Fix. And for me, the music video portrays sort of like a breakup, a relationship gone sour. In the music video, you kind of see Bryce like singing and dancing what appears to be like a house or a bedroom. He's driving in a car. Maybe he's thinking about something that he might have done wrong within the relationship. And then you kind of see like what may or may not have been like his actual girlfriend, or maybe he had somebody playing an ex-girlfriend or whatever the case may be. A girl's like whipping clothes at him in the music video. So first off, discuss a little bit about that song. Why did you write it? And does that song come from personal experience? Is it about an actual breakup?
Oh yeah, it's like I said, everything that I write, I've lived. I feel like I can't sing it if I haven't lived it. It's actually a funny story. My stepmom actually came up with the idea for the song. I was dating a girl and I was getting ready to bring her back home to meet my family. And we ended up breaking up that same week. And, I had to call, and it's always one of those weird moments where you're like, hey, Dad, we're not coming home. And I was on speakerphone and, kind of explained the situation. And my stepmom just told me, she was like, well, Bryce, there's some things duct tape can't fix. And I kind of took it to heart. And I was like, that's a good line. So my buddy Matt Gorman and I, he was actually just on American Idol. We sat down and wrote this song together. I thought it was a fun way to kind of vent a little bit and get some stuff off my chest. And it worked out to be, a lot more fun, upbeat than a slow breakup song, like kind of like Luke Combs' When It Rains, It Pours. And this part's kind of bad, but we were casting for the music video, and we did it actually in Greensboro. And, living here and going to school here, I knew a lot of people around. And all the girls that were in the music video actually ended up working with the ex-girlfriend that the song was about. So that was a terrible and fun twist to that. But
I don't mean to laugh, but that is a little bit funny and like ironic, right?
Oh, extremely ironic. Yeah.
Sorry, let me like not laugh. Hold on.
No, it's all right. That was the whole point of it.
Do you have any new music dropping and coming out? And where can people look up your tour schedule? I know Ryan and I were just recently talking about the fact that you might be playing at Ziggy's locally in the North Carolina area sometime in October. We're hoping to come check that out if he's local and we're still around. Please go ahead and shout it out. Like, where can people look up your tour schedule?
Honestly, nowhere right now. The being so early in on this, we haven't really gotten that part figured out yet. So when shows come up, it's usually with not that much advance. But yeah, I actually just booked a show at Ziggy's yesterday for October 6th. So that's the next one on the calendar right now after the season. So that'll be really cool, to finish up the season with that.
That is awesome. We are looking forward to potentially coming to see you play live at some point in October. Let's kind of just drop like We'll drop your merchandise and website again shortly. I want you to be able to shout out your social media, your merchandise, your website, all of that good stuff. But the last and final question regarding country music is, I know you got heavily influenced, you mentioned, from your grandfather, which I think is amazing. Are there any country singers that you look up to currently now? Is there anybody in particular that you would like to collaborate with or maybe open a show for down the road or in the near future?
I've been so blessed with how we started this. Like I said, I never would have seen myself sing country music professionally in any world. And, they always say, you want to hear God laugh, tell him your plans. And that's pretty much how he made my life go. I got lucky to, like the fourth time I was ever on stage, I opened for Jake Owen in front of 10,000 people. And that was the craziest thing I've ever done. But, I've gotten to play with him. I went to the same high school as Luke Combs and Chase Rice, and I got to open for Chase last year. Listening to guys growing up like Kid Rock, got to play with him last year. Lee Bryce was one of my huge influences. I got to open up for him this year. Eric Church will always be probably my number one. The songs that the guy writes is unbelievable, and everything I've heard about him as a human being. I'd love to collaborate with a guy like Luke Combs or, Eric Church or anybody like that. But that's one of my big influences. Garth Brooks, always, the entertainer that he was or is, I guess, has always been a huge influence. And, like you were talking about earlier, showing the kids that you can do it, coming from a high school where you've got two guys that, ended up at one point in time being the face of country music. It really showed me you can do it. We always used to make the joke like, well, we're all a kid from somewhere, but it really showed me it doesn't matter where you're from or who you are. If you dream it, you can achieve it. And that was one of the really cool parts about having those guys to look up to and kind of seeing how they forged their path through it.
You kind of hit the nail on the head with the point of the fact that it's good to kind of just test out your skills and see if you're good at something, because at the end of the day, it's not a failure. You're able to see if you have a certain skill. You're able to see if you can pursue something. Like Kenny Chesney wouldn't be Kenny Chesney if he never picked up probably a guitar and started writing songs when he was younger. Alex Rodriguez would not be Alex Rodriguez if he didn't pick up a baseball as a child. Those baby steps, just get up, guys, test everything out and see how you do, because you could very much so be the next Bryce Hensley or the next A-Rod. So just go out, go do it, see what happens, and work hard at it, and you could be the next big thing. You never know, and you won't know unless you test it out. Before we wrap up the whole country music talk, any final words on what it means to be both a duo, or should I say dual, professional athlete and up-and-coming country singer, being able to merge both? And then please shout out your social media, your merchandise, and your website and social media so people can keep up with what you're doing.
It's really surreal, to be honest with you. That's the best word that I can use for it. Luke Combs wrote a song that hasn't come out yet, but it's got the best line I can kind of, use to describe it. It says, "I never understand how a guy like me who would have been fine with 3 ended up with a 5-leaf clover." And I think it's one of the things of when you have good intentions in your heart, when you treat people well, and when you do things for the right reasons and for the love of it, not just to make money or not just, for fame. I think that's when life really works itself out and things start to work out. And that's why, I do what I do, is because I love it. My dad always makes the joke before I go on stage. Every time I get ready to go on stage, he says, "Hey, just remember you were born to do this." And it's one of the, the coolest parts of me playing a show is hearing that and hugging my dad before I go on, because it's, I honestly feel like, one of my life's purposes was to entertain people, whether that be, sitting in a living room telling jokes or, up on a stage singing to people or on a mound. But I think that's the big thing, is just have your heart in the right place and don't just do it because you think it can make you famous or make you a lot of money. But, when you love to do something, never stop. But I think that's the biggest, the part that I've gotten out of being able to do both is just do what you love and do it full-heartedly. Friday Night Lights, clear eyes, full heart, can't lose. And that's kind of a mantra I've taken on for the last couple of years, is as long as you're looking the right way and your heart is in the right place, you really can't lose and you can't fail because you always learn. The merchandise and stuff, if you go to brycehensley.com, you'll find it on there. And then social media is just Bryce Hensley Music.
Awesome. Well, Bryce, you were fantastic. I cannot wait to have you back on this podcast again at some point, maybe in the fall or winter, have you catch up with some of us talking about your tour dates and some of the shows that you might be doing for people live. I like to consider my podcast an audible reality TV show, in the sense that I don't just have my guests come on here once. I like to have people come on here multiple times and kind of have people keep up and follow with what you're doing. So I was going to ask you about Positive Pop, but you kind of already given us your Positive Pop.
I thought about this.
All right, well, give us another Positive Pop.
So I got this tattoo on my wrist when I was with the Kansas City Royals. I don't know if you can see it on the screen or not, but it says, "Be where your feet are." My dad was always big on don't get tattoos where you can see them, but I wanted something that I saw every day. Just as a reminder of, we're always getting really excited about where we're going, and we always think about where we've been. But the most important thing is to always be where your feet are and enjoy the moment, because you never know how precious it is.
Awesome. Well, Bryce, you were freaking fantastic. Fully enjoyed having you on here. BosBabes fanatics and Rockers fans, thank you so much for tuning in. Bryce was incredible. I can't wait to see how the remainder of the Highpoint Rockers baseball season ends up. And again, we hope that we make playoffs. We are going to be going to follow Bryce's career online, whether it's baseball, whether it's country music related, or anything else that he has up his sleeve down the road. He seems very creative minded and the type of person that is going to continue to chase his dreams. Any final words, Bryce, before we wrap up the show?
I just thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it, Brittany.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bryce. You crushed it.
I appreciate it. We'll see you tonight.